Tariq Nasheed.
What's going on, Vlad?
Welcome to VladTV.
Hey, man, it's my pleasure to be here.
It's our pleasure to have you here.
Yes,
I understand
sir.
you've seen a few of our interviews in the past.
I have. I'm a fan, especially of the West Coast stuff.
Right. We
real
had a
good
lot of
stuff.
West Coast people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we had a lot of some of the NWA people. We had like MC8 and a lot of other people.
Loved it.
I'm from the West Coast myself. I grew up in the Bay, so it was a way to kind of like reconnect with some of my heroes.
I learned a lot of game from the Bay Area cats. A lot of game from them.
Yeah, man. So you were born in Detroit.
Yeah.
You lived in Alabama, but at around 17 you came to LA.
Yeah, I came to LA at 17. I got a one-way plane ticket. Southwest Airlines.
The cheapest one.
The Greyhound of airlines.
Exactly.
So I got a one-way ticket out here, man. I lived in South Central, Compton, kicked around Hollywood, and just learned the game and just, learned my way around life and came up in the game that way, and here I am.
Now, you had mentioned on your Breakfast Club interview that you got in some trouble when you were in LA originally.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I came out here in the 80s. This was the late 80s, so trouble was waiting.
Right.
So, just by association, I hung around a lot of the hustlers, gang members, pimps, players, all that stuff. So the trouble that they were into, that kind of sucks you in. So I got caught up in that a little bit, but fortunately I was able to navigate my way out of it. So, and learn from that.
You had mentioned that you were in like police chases with helicopters and stuff like that. What was that over?
We got into like a little altercation back in the day, and this was before a felony evasion. They didn't have felony evasion, so back then if you ran away, you just got away. So we would, the cops would chase us. We'd run. And one time we literally got into a helicopter chase. The police were after us. They had helicopters because we saw some guys. I was with some friends who were in a gang. They saw some rival gang members, and it's this guilty by association thing out here. They don't care about you not being in a gang, which I was never in a gang, but I was around a lot of that stuff. So they would see you with some other guys that they're beefing with, so they'll just include you. Bullets don't really have no name on them. So they started going at us, we started going at them, and somebody called the police, and we started running, and they had helicopters, and we went to jail. I was a minor at the time, so
you got caught?
I got caught.
Okay.
We did get caught. I didn't get away that time, but
you
I
got caught for being associated with a shooting then?
Yeah, but
which is serious.
But this is the thing. At the time, I got off because they didn't find a weapon on me, and this was before all these all-in laws. Now, if one person does a crime, the whole neighborhood goes to jail now. They've tightened up those laws. Yeah. But back then, if one person got caught and they didn't snitch, nobody got in trouble. So it was the laws were a little bit lax back then. That was right before the gang injunctions they had out here. They started those gang injunctions like in the early 90s. Whereas if a person is a Crip, every Crip in that neighborhood is going to go to jail for that one crime that one Crip did. That's kind of like that whole Bobby Smurda thing they got now. Like Bobby Smurda didn't actually commit a crime. They got Bobby Smurda on crimes that his so-called gang committed. Yeah. And that's why he got 7 years for really not doing anything. That's these all-in laws that they have for us right now so they can fill these jails up.
Right, yeah, because his affiliates got like football numbers.
Yeah. But
7 years is serious.
Yeah, it's very serious for not doing anything, just being associated with somebody who did a crime, because they got to fill these prisons up, man, and they're coming up with these all-in laws like crazy.
Yeah,
there was somebody down in Miami, I think. This person, I think he got convicted for letting somebody use his car in a robbery. So these laws are crazy now.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned that the black hustler is the backbone of the black community.
Yeah.
And not the black church.
No, not the black church. It's the black hustlers.
Okay.
The black hustlers. If you go back in history, in the history of America, you'll see the people who fueled a lot of protection for black society was the black hustlers. Go back to they called it the sporting life in the early days, but black hustlers were the ones who came up with the numbers running. They had the black brothels. Those institutions fed a lot of families. Those institutions kept a lot of people out of trouble. Those institutions kept a lot of people educated. They would help send people to school. The numbers runners, they started the lottery that we know now based on that. The policy makers and the numbers runners from back in the day. down in Atlanta, for example, there was a riot down there. They had a riot in Atlanta when, I think in the early 1900s, and it was the pool hall guys that really saved Atlanta from being a sundown town. They were trying to run all the black people out of Atlanta. So you had all the hustlers and the pool hall guys who provided the guns and the ammunition to fight off the white supremacists who were trying to run everybody out, because at that time, they would just run black people out of whole towns. They tried to do it with Tulsa. They did it with a lot of other cities. And it was the hustlers that stopped a lot of that stuff. Even in the civil rights movement, a lot of the pool hall dudes were the ones that were funding and financing a lot of stuff that people don't know about. They were providing the guns. There was a lot of protection for black people during the civil rights movement. It wasn't all nonviolent. That's a real big myth. You had brothers out there with guns that were locked and loaded, ready to protect the black community.
Right. I mean, also the Black Panthers. And
absolutely.
Groups like that.
And they were hustlers. All those guys came from a hustling background. You look at the early Black Panthers, Geronimo Pratt, all these dudes, they were street dudes. You know?
Right. Yeah. And a lot of them ended up getting locked up.
They got back in the game after the whole
year. And everything else like that. And, Huey P. Newton, ended up getting on afterwards. Indeed. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of sad the way it got dismantled.
Yeah.
The way it did. I actually interviewed, some of the affiliates, and like Daruba bin Wahad, who was one of the original New York Black Panthers and stuff like that. He was part of the Panther 21.
Oh wow, with Tupac's mom.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, those hustlers back then, man, they knew how to have international connections. That's why a lot of them would go to Cuba. It was the hustlers funding all that stuff. Especially in the Bay, you're from the Bay, and there was a lot of those street dudes that were supporting the Panthers, supporting people's legal funds. The movie The Mac with Max Julian.
That was done in Oakland.
Yeah, it was done in Oakland, and the Panthers, they had to move the movie to L.A. because the Panthers were shaking down the people in the movie. Yeah,
really?
Yeah, they were shaking down.
Because of the way they were portraying.
Yeah, they were like,
the black community.
Yeah, if you want to show that, you're going to have to show somebody positive. And if you look at the movie The Mac, they got like one conscious character in the movie. You notice that? They had to interject that in. And Ron Newt, I know you interviewed him.
Yes,
I know. I've been knowing Ron for years.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he was in that. I think
Ron Newt was in The Hustler?
Was in the Mac? I think so. Ask him that, because he's real cool friends with my man Doug. And I think Ron Newt, he said that he was in it. He said it, I don't know. But Ron Newt was around all those dudes. And
I can believe it.
Yeah, but the movie was done about a dude named Frank Ward. It was some real hustlers. And these dudes really funded and helped out a lot of people in the Black Power movement. But the Panthers had a beef with these guys because they wanted to kind of shake them down. They wanted to take it from, hey, you help us, where you're obligated to paying us. So that was a big friction. There was a big beef going on between the real hustlers associated with the movie The Mac and the Black Panthers, particularly Huey P. Newton. So it was a real big thing. So they had to move the whole movie down here to L.A.
Now, what about the Black church? How do you feel about that?
Black church is good. Black church is good. I'm not knocking the Black church. The Black church is very instrumental. Well, it used to be more instrumental in the revolutionary spirit of Black society, because the Black church used to be a place where Black people can go and talk in code and come up with plans and ideologies on how to deal with systematic racism. Unfortunately, the Black church now has been co-opted by the dominant society, and it's used to pacify Black society and Black rebellions.
But wasn't that originally what the white power structure used with the Black church? Like, because the Black preacher was the first Black overclass.
Exactly. But
because
Black people,
they kept the other Blacks in line based on what the white slave owners wanted.
But Black people then were smart enough to use that to their advantage and start coding the language. So a lot of them would make gospel songs with coded runaway language in it. Nat Turner, who Nate Parker is playing,
Nate Parker, yeah.
He was a preacher, and they used the church to come up with rebellions. My man, Denmark Vesey, they used the Black church to stage a rebellion out there in South Carolina. It got thwarted, but they were going to have one of the biggest rebellions in this country. They had like 9,000 people ready to take over the city of Charleston, but somebody snitched on them. So people have used the church as a way to come up with little plans and plots to overthrow systematic racism. But the people in the dominant society, they have co-opted the church, so they've stopped all that.
Now, how do you feel about the church these days?
The church these days, it's not doing any good for Black society as it should. And I'm not going to knock them totally, because the black church, they do provide certain things. You know, they do help people with food, clothing, shelter. So they do a lot. They do. Unfortunately, that gets canceled out by them cooperating with the dominant society and pacifying black society. Meaning, Donald Sterling, remember him when he made all his racist comments? All he did was go to a black church, give them a couple of dollars, and they ran out with the whole "we forgive, we forgive." See, that thing, that's something that the black church has to cut out. And it's too easy to throw a couple of dollars at a black church and have them bring in a Donald Trump, bring in another racist, and start all that forgiveness talk. So that weakens us.
Well, I've always had a problem with, you know, religious organizations in general being tax exempt when they're being run as a business.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember there was this one preacher that recently did a GoFundMe page for a private jet.
Creflo Dollar.
Creflo Dollar.
Yeah.
You know, perfect name.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, the fact that you are buying a private jet and yet you don't pay any taxes, and you're clearly running this organization as a business.
Absolutely.
You know, makes me upset as a business owner, where it's like, I have a lot of employees that I support.
Absolutely.
We have, you know, a lot of overhead, a lot of costs. You know, we have to work within a certain, you know, with the labor department and everything else like that. And yet we have to pay taxes.
Scientologists, they were going through the same thing.
Scientologists do not pay taxes.
They don't pay taxes. They were fighting for the right to keep their organization listed as a religion because they were trying to do what you were talking about. They were like, y'all got employees, you got a profit, so we're going to tax you. So they had all these high-priced lawyers say, hey, this is a religion. They're very strict on it being a religion so they can keep all that money.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
I wonder if it's going to keep going.
It will. It will. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I feel you. So what are some of the important parts of the art of macking?
The important, art of macking is really about confidence, man. The important thing that guys have to understand, confidence is the main fuel that you need for anything you do. I have a lot of dudes who think that it's about material things, it's about cars, it's about status. That don't mean anything. Confidence will overcompensate that because you get confidence from your status. You get confidence from that car. So if you already have all of those things, you don't need to compensate for the material external things. So the confidence has to come from within. And confidence is all about self-trust. That's all it is. You trust yourself. A lot of dudes have lack of confidence because they don't trust themselves. They don't trust that people are going to like them for them. They don't trust that people are going to believe in them for who they are. And that's the basis for the lack of confidence. So I teach guys, trust yourself. That's the main part of confidence.
I mean, because I'll tell you, the one thing I noticed about my interaction with women is that once I became known, but it's not really that. When I meet a woman who already knows who I am, who knows about my business and so forth, it's a completely different interaction than meeting a woman who I try to tell her about myself or whatever else. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like it becomes flipped.
Right.
You know, if a woman already knows you by reputation, they're now pursuing you as opposed to you pursuing them. You sort of become, you know, take on the stereotypical woman role in terms of being pursued.
Absolutely.
See what I'm saying?
Now that helps, you know, reputation helps, but the thing is you're going to have to keep your rep up. And just like with a lot of rappers and singers, a lot of them fall off and the women fall off. So you don't want that. And that's why a lot of cats getting into drinking and all that, because all of the stuff and all the love that they were getting once they were hot, it wasn't real.
That's a good point.
It wasn't genuine. And the thing is, you want to get that genuine admiration. You want to get that genuine affection, and you get that by being in a total state of confidence at all times. So even before I was known doing my books, man, we would go out to the club and we could pull, me and my crew, because we had confidence in what we did. We trusted ourselves. We knew that we're going to make our mouthpieces as tight as possible so we can spit game and accomplish everything we wanted to accomplish. And women feed off confidence, man. When they see a dude who's confident, just meaning he's sure of himself, sometimes you don't even have to have a hellified good conversation. A lot of guys ask me another thing. They say, well, Tariq, what do I say to women that I meet? It's not about what you say. It's about the nonverbal energy. Women feed off nonverbal energy. You can walk up to a woman and not really say anything, just kind of stand up to her, stand up around her, and just have an aura about yourself. And she knows something is popping. This is the guy. There's something about him that I need to look at, because it's innate that women look for leadership in a man. That's a natural instinct. So
True.
any man who has leadership quality or leadership attitude, women are going to gravitate towards that.
I feel you. What are some of the mistakes that men make?
Some of the biggest mistakes men make is bragging on themselves. That's you don't want to sell yourself.
No?
You don't know. You never brag on yourself. It's like a used car salesman. A used car salesman, when you have a raggedy ass car, you got to talk that car up. It has good miles, has a radio, the tires are new, got a new muffler, has a new transmission, and you come in now, you get $25 off. We're going to give you a toaster. We're going to give you a chicken. We're going to give you some Popeyes. We're going to give you a Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles coupon. You come on in, bring your kids. We got a clown and some donkeys for the kids. But you notice they never have commercials for Mercedes, for Maybachs. You never see commercials for Bentleys. They don't have to. They don't have commercials for them. You don't have to advertise it. That car is fly. Get your shit together and get it. That's the aura that they have.
Well, I mean, they actually do have advertisements for Bentleys and Rolls Royces and so forth, but they're like in the Rob Report. And
Right,
stuff like that.
right,
For
right.
example, like, there are, billboards for Rolex.
But I'm talking on television. You never see it on television.
No, you never see a Rolex commercial on television, because they know that the average person cannot afford this.
Exactly.
So you have target marketing, but it's not like they don't do marketing at all. They
Right.
just do target marketing because they're marketing to a very small group of people.
Right.
If they had a Maybach television during the morning news, people are driving to work in their Hondas going, this is nice, I guess.
Yeah.
This is like 4 years of my salary. I'm never going to be able to get this. So there is advertising. It's just advertising to certain people.
Right, it's very directed, but the thing is, it's not a mass thing.
Yeah.
They don't go out of their way to promote this item because they know people who are supposed to have it know how to look for it.
Mm-hmm.
They assume that. And there's a confidence in their marketing. They know that people who have the money to get that will go find that if they really wanted it.
Yeah.
And the same thing with you. When you're talking to somebody at a club, you're meeting somebody, don't oversell yourself, because people see that as insecurity. When they see a person, well, I'm a producer, I have a mansion, I have a yacht, I have some
LA
horses.
for you right there.
When women are like, okay, women are looking at that like that's a sign of insecurity, because you're trying. Players don't try. You don't have to try.
Well, but isn't having a nice car, having nice clothes, having certain types of jewelry, isn't that kind of like bragging already?
No, because you like that. Having nice stuff is for you. You're supposed to have nice stuff. Even when dudes go on dates, I tell guys, don't try to impress women by taking them to expensive places for them. What you're doing when you go to an expensive restaurant, that's for you. You're bringing that person along.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
That's the vibe you got to have. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to Mr. Chow's. This is my spot.
Yeah, I like Mr.
Mr.
Chow's.
Chow's.
Yeah.
Come with me.
Yeah.
It's not like I want to take you to somewhere special. I want to take you somewhere where there's roses. See, that's insecure. Now you're trying to impress this person. And women, they look at that. They're like, okay, let me get over on this dude because he's already trying to impress me. I found me a mark. So you got to flip that. Everything nice is about you, and you're bringing everybody along on the ride.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Now, you've talked about how successful men can't just have one woman.
They can. If they choose, they can.
But in general,
In general, a lot of dudes, and going back through history, man, successful men, especially kings, they've always had the wife and the mistress, side pieces and all that, because, power is, when you're a powerful person, that you become a sun, you become illuminated. And different planets orbit around the illuminated sun. And that happens with guys. When you are successful and you have confidence, people are going to gravitate and orbit around you. And, a lot of times people take advantage of that, or people utilize those different options. But there are successful guys, and in many cases, who have one woman, as long as the woman is thorough and the woman is a person that will fill the void in his life, or a person that was down with him before he became successful. And the thing is, all men go through a player stage. A lot of dudes have to get that stage out of their system. The problem is, a lot of dudes don't get the player stage out of their system. A lot of dudes get married at a young age, and then they become successful later, then they go through that midlife crisis.
I mean, do you think the player stage really leaves a man's system
Yeah,
completely?
yeah. Completely. Okay, now you said does it leave completely? There you go.
You don't think men just want variety in general, just being men? You know, just if you just look at the animal world.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, lions don't stay faithful to the one lioness. They go out, do what they got to do. They come back. They take care of their family.
In some cases, man, a guy, he will go through his player stage, and later on down the line, he might get bored, and he said, let me just try something new temporarily. But he might just be going through a little slug, a little thing, and he might try something. But you always want to go back to your main thing. But a lot of guys do get all of it out of their system. There's a lot of guys who, they've been through the player stage, and they're like, okay, I've been there, done that. I've got the notches under my belt. You know, I've had a variety. I got this one person here. I like what I have, and I'm going to rock with this. So that is possible.
But you don't think that the women of very successful men understand that that man's going to want some variety and accept that?
A lot of women do understand that. A lot of women understand that, and a lot of women have the mentality is, okay, look, if you go out there and do your thing, don't let me find out about it.
Yeah, don't pop up with a baby.
Yeah, don't pop up with a baby. You know,
don't
I
bring
kind
a
of
disease
know.
home.
Right.
That type of thing.
It's that type of thing. A lot of women know on a subconscious level. They know, but
or
they
even
don't.
on a conscious level.
Yeah. There's some women who know, but there's a lot of women who are like, don't bring it in front of me.
Right. I mean, because you've said this you've said this before, that what a marriage really is a business relationship.
Exactly. That's all it is. Yeah.
You know, historically, you didn't even get to meet your wife until the day of the wedding.
Absolutely.
You know, it was arranged by the families.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was a financial talk saying, you know, financially it makes sense for our son and your daughter to form this union so we could have our respective businesses grow in this type of fashion.
Absolutely.
We don't care what the kids think about this. This decision has been made, and they're going to have to make it work.
Exactly.
And most times it works.
Exactly.
It worked.
And truth be told, all relationships between men and women, it's a business.
Yeah.
It's all a business because
And it's a friendship.
it's a friendship too, but when you get into a relationship, even without the marriage, now marriage is like legally binding. That's a legal business. But even in relationships, it's a business because every person you deal with is going to be an asset or a liability. And that's all business is about, assets and liabilities. Who's going to bring something to the table? Who's going to take something away? And every person you're in a relationship with, they are going to bring something to you or take something away. There's only 3 types of relationships. Relationships for sexual gratification, mental and emotional gratification, and financial gratification. See, when we simplify things like that, we can see what a person's agenda is. A lot of dudes get in relationships for the sexual gratification.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, I got a sex partner.
Right. But that doesn't last forever.
That doesn't last forever. So this is why guys have a number of sexual relationships when they're psychologically and not in a financial position to provide in a relationship. They have a bunch of side chicks and women that they lay up with. And a lot of women, they'll have sex with the dude if they're getting some financial gratification out of it. Yeah, he's sleeping with other chicks, but he pays my rent every now and then. So the relationships, when we break them down like that, they're very simplistic.
Well, you've said that you shouldn't be dating a woman in a lower economic class than you.
You can. It's
Aren't
okay.
most women in a lower economic class than men?
Yeah, you can.
Just the way society's laid out?
You can date a woman in a lower economic class because, again, women, you can upgrade a woman to your status.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If you are a guy who has status. If you're a guy who has status. Now, with women, when they date a man of lower economic status, women on a subconscious level, they don't respect the dude.
Right.
They don't respect him.
You know, I spent a lot of time in Oakland, and, you know, so I was around all the pimps and the pimp mentality, but that never really appealed to me. I always thought it was weak.
Really?
I thought it was weak for a man to have a job living off of women. That's what I felt. Like, you can't stand on your own two, so you're trying to get women to maintain your lifestyle, which isn't easy.
Well, you go back to the history of pimping, though. When you look at the history of it, the history of pimping was basically after slavery during Reconstruction, a lot of black women went up to the North, and a lot of the white dudes up there were taking advantage of the women sexually. Black women would get jobs as maids, and they would have to have sex with these white men in the homes. That's where the term hunky came from. When in the early 1900s, when they would see these black women walking around in the North, they would honk their horns at them. That's where they were like, this hunky's honking at me.
Oh,
Yeah, a lot of folks don't know that.
I did not know
Yeah,
this.
it was them trying to come on to the black women all going up north.
Okay.
So these white males would just take advantage of black women sexually, and black women said, okay, well, shit, what am I going to do? I don't have any protection. So then the northerners, these black men in the north said, okay, well, look, I can provide protection for you up here. I need a little something out of it. So that's where the pimping started.
Right.
And a lot of brothers started making money, and then around 1910, then they started coming up with the white slave laws, because white women were like, hey, I want protection from this black man too, because a lot of white women were being taken advantage of sexually. So they would prostitute themselves and give these black pimps their money. And when white folks found out about that, they were like, oh, hell no, bam. They passed the Mann Act in, I think, 1910, where they started, in the law is called the white slave trafficking law, where you can't take women across state lines and all this old stuff.
Right. But the pimp just doesn't take part of the money, he takes all the money.
Take all of it, yeah. Yeah, it's some real deep stuff. Because the thing is, with the pimps, guys, just growing up around them and how they would break the game down, that's a relationship. That's a marriage.
It is.
And all the women are your wife-in-laws. That's why they call them wife-in-laws. And in any marriage, all the money is community property.
Right, yeah, I mean, because I know Don Magic Juan. I've interviewed him a few times. It's a very deep thing. And in fact, at one point, I remember when the movie, when the documentary Pimps Up, Hoes Down came out, I got obsessed with this whole thing. Like I read all of, like Don Magic Juan's book. Mm-hmm. There's another book called the Sweet Science of Sin.
Yeah, that's Bilbo. King Bilbo out of Chicago.
I watched all the documentaries and everything else like that. And at the end of all that, what I realized is it is a relationship.
Yeah.
And you're also dealing with very damaged women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like you're not going to just go into a corporation and then have, ask for that woman for, to give you all her money. You got to find someone who's raped by their father, borderline homeless, that type of thing.
And that's the misconception. A lot of people, that's a real big misconception, that a lot of dudes just get runaways to put out there on the track. And that's not the case. That's why you have a lot of high-end women. Yeah. You have a lot of high-end women who got into the game.
But the majority,
on
of these girls.
On a street level, yeah. Now, we're in LA. You'd be surprised how many women you don't know who's in the game is in the game. There's a lot of people who secretly in the game.
How do you define the game? Because, I always love this term. The big difference between free pussy and pussy you paid for is that free pussy is more expensive.
Well, people can say that. And that's true to a certain extent. That's true to a certain extent, because I call it front door sex and back door sex. Like front door sex, a girl in the game charges a flat rate, you have sex with her, she's going out your life, everything is cool.
Right.
Back door is when you get into a relationship with some chick, you have sex with her, you guys are having a little sexual relationship, y'all break up, and then all of a sudden, if you're a man of means, she's trying to get money out of you from palimony. Or if you were a celebrity, now she's on Love and Hip Hop or Basketball Wives talking about she had a relationship with you and now she's getting $1,500 to do an appearance at a club. You know what I'm saying?
But even beyond that, if you are sexually involved with a woman, she's not just going to have sex. You're not just going to show up at her house, have sex with her, and then leave. She's going to expect you to take her out to dinner, take her shopping, help her out when she needs help, that type of thing. Like, whereas if you pay for sex, you're paying for that, and that's it. And you're also paying to leave afterwards.
Right.
You don't have to spend time with them afterwards. This is why I'm saying, not only is it cheaper money-wise, but also time-wise, resource-wise, and so forth.
Yeah, and the whole, you're paying for dates and you're paying for hotels and all that. I mean, that's the least of guys' worries now, especially black men of means, because now with black men, you have sex, and if you're a man of means, you have sex with some women, especially a white chick. 50 years later, she say, well, hell, he drugged me and raped me, so I want $100 million. Just like with Bill Cosby, what he's going through. All that, those women coming out against him, all that was bullshit.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. You have any more books coming?
I'm working on a book, my first novel, but I've been so busy doing these documentaries. That's the thing now. That sidetracked me from working on a lot of books. I started doing the Hidden Colors films, and that just took all the way off.
Okay. And where'd you put that out?
Hidden Colors is, we had a theatrical run on all of them. We're on Hidden Colors 4 now. That was just released earlier. And it's available for sale on the site and Amazon. And it's like the Hidden Colors series. It's the best-selling Black history documentary series ever.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually done a few documentaries myself. I ended up getting out of it because I just didn't feel the money was there.
Oh, well, the money's there for the Hidden Colors.
Oh, really? That's what's up. Yeah, I mean, I did my first documentary was called Ghost Ride the Whip. It was a Bay Area music documentary.
Oh, okay.
And then I produced this movie called Kiss and Tail, which was a documentary about Corinne Steffens, AKA Superhead.
Oh, okay.
And that made it on Showtime.
Oh, wow. Wow.
But after doing these two documentaries, what I realized was that, I got, I don't know, 25, 35,000 up front. I killed myself for like 3-4 months making these things, and then I never saw any royalty checks afterwards, which is actually what prompted me to launch VladTV.
Oh, okay.
Because I wanted to control my own platform and continue to make royalties off my product, as opposed to have a company lie to me and tell me they haven't recouped yet.
Exactly.
Maybe your experience is different.
And that's why we don't go through a distributor. We distribute everything ourselves. Yeah, we do not, especially with the Hidden Colors series.
Yeah.
We do everything in-house, man. We get all the money coming to us.
That's the trick, huh?
Yeah, that's the trick. I was just telling Dame Dash about that the other day. Dame was asking me, we were talking about distribution and all that. I'm like, man, you better distribute all that stuff yourself.
I feel you. Now, Amber Rose just had her slut walk in LA. What are your thoughts on that?
With Amber Rose, I have very mixed feelings about Amber Rose, because Amber Rose, she has elevated herself on Black society. She's come up off Black society. And Amber Rose has also emphatically distanced herself from Blackness. She has said in many interviews, I'm not Black.
She said that?
Yeah, she has. She said, I am not a Black woman at all. And she says she's Cape Verdean, but Cape Verde is full of Black people.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this woman needs to learn geography and genealogy. And also, she said a lot of stuff. She said when she got married to Wiz Khalifa, her family was tripping because of him being Black. I'm like, okay, what kind of family does this woman come from?
Right.
So,
I mean, her son is Black.
Her son is Black. And her mother's Black. I mean, her mother is clearly a Black woman. They say Cape Verdean, but Cape Verdean is full of African people. So, this woman growing up in that environment, a lot of people who come from different cultures, they come to Black society to get elevated. And we have a very big problem with elevating people who don't really relate to us. We elevate the dregs of other societies. And I'm not trying to disparage her, but I don't like Black society being used. And when people come up off us, they will flip it. Now, that whole slut walk thing, aligning yourself with these white feminists, white feminism has always had an anti-Black male agenda. So, oh yeah.
Explain.
Go back to the early form of feminism, white feminism, the first wave of feminism. And as a matter of fact, there's a great book called White Women's Rights, the racial origin of feminism. And it was a white woman who wrote the book. I forgot her name. But Susan B. Anthony, all of these early white feminists, they were abolitionists at first. And the abolitionist movement morphed over into the white women's movement. Because
slavery
yeah,
abolitionists?
yeah. A lot of them were advocates for getting slavery abolished, and then they started to slip in the white woman's agenda. They were like, well, white women, we're being treated like slaves too. And then when they started talking about freeing Black people and giving Black people voting rights, they were like, oh, wait a minute. These people are still inferior now. We don't mind them being free or, outside of the confines of slavery, but they're not us. They're still Negroes and they're still inferior. And if you look at all of the writings of some of these early white feminists, they would all talk about how they wanted to maintain white supremacy. These are their words.
Well, the founder of Planned Parenthood,
Margaret Sanger,
was a woman that was, from what I understand, and I remember I talked to someone who actually worked at Planned Parenthood and who didn't know this. I guess it was originally designed to try to eliminate Blacks and Jews, by
eugenics.
Eugenics. Aborting the children.
Yeah, Margaret Sanger, she was a white feminist. That's a perfect example. Yeah. And they wanted to get Black women and sterilize them. That's why they wanted to rally Black women up and say, hey, we're going to fight for your rights, but we want you to come on in and get this sterilization, because they were trying to eliminate Black people. Right. So it's a very evil origin.
Yeah.
And the white feminist movement has always been used to destabilize Black society, going to the 1960s when we had the civil rights movement. when we started to fight for our freedoms and all this, the white feminists came along again and told black women, hey, the problem isn't white people, it's men. We need to fight together as sisters in the struggle against patriarchy. You need to be independent, you don't need a man. And that sidetracked the whole civil rights movement. And the white feminist movement, they've never helped black women. They've never done anything for black women as a whole. Even to this day, you got black women out here getting beat up and killed by cops. None of these white feminists, they say nothing about that. But they align black women to help them out when they want to start targeting Bill Cosby, when they want to attack Nate Parker. They align a lot of black women for that. When they had that whole street harassment campaign, that racist campaign that they had where they were showing black men harassing women in the streets, the white feminists were behind that. In the 1970s, a lot of white feminist groups started to get millions of dollars by portraying black men as these predators who were going to rape white women during the 70s because of the desegregation. Because in the late 60s, early 70s, they took away all the segregation laws so black people could move anywhere. And the white feminists said, okay, if all these black men can move into these cities, they're going to rape us. So give us millions of dollars to start these rape centers and these crisis centers. All these things started popping up in the 70s. And it was fueled by that black male fear, that rape propaganda.
So how does the Amber Rose slut walk tie into this?
That goes into that because I remember when Amber Rose was doing the slut walk, one of the first ones she did, she was on there talking about how all these brothers were making her feel slut shame. Kanye made me feel bad. Another black guy I was dealing with made me feel bad. She was falling right in line with that the black man did me wrong nonsense. That's why I can't co-sign that. Can't co-sign that at all, because if you're aligning yourself with these people who have been proven white supremacists against black society, and you're aligning yourself and falling in line with that anti-black male rhetoric, and you've come up off black society, can't co-sign that at all.
I mean, Benzino recently spoke out against it.
Yeah, shout out to Benzino. I like Benzino.
Yeah, I mean, he said that his 19-year-old daughter ain't falling for it.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's another thing too. And we got so much going on in black society that we need to empower ourselves. And they're telling us we need to rally around slut walking. With black people and black men and women, we've always been perceived as sluts by the dominant society. They've always portrayed us as being sexual deviants. They've always presented us as being sexual promiscuous, saying that's part of black culture. Sexual deviancy. So we don't need to promote that. They already think that of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you know, for example, like Benzino said, I don't want my daughter to call herself a slut.
Right.
I don't want her to be, to celebrate that.
Exactly. And let's go back again to the 70s. That's another reason why the pimp game had another rush in the early 70s, because of the feminist movement. In the feminist movement, they were telling black women the same thing. You are a sister in the struggle. You don't have to be under the confines of men. Those black men are going to treat you like the white men treat us. Take your bra off, show your titty, get you a whole bunch of sexual partners. That's what they were telling sisters in the 70s. So they had that whole free love movement. Free love movement started in the Bay, out there in San Francisco. That's why so many pimps popped up in the Bay.
Ashbury and all that.
Yeah. So many, all those pimps were coming right up out of the Bay Area because of all that free love. Because you got all that free love, somebody's gonna start getting pimped somewhere down the line.
Gonna get paid off this.
Somebody's gonna get paid because all those hippies, they didn't have no jobs, so they needed money for LSD, weed, and all that. And somebody came and gave them some instructions.
Yeah, I think, what was that quote? I think it was Fillmore Slim.
Yeah.
He said, "Pussy will sell when corn and cotton won't."
Wait, exactly.
You've called out a lot of black celebrities as coons, particularly in sports.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, we had a Coon Train Awards show. We we talked about people, and we had people vote on who should be in the Coon Train Awards. And unfortunately, with sports, man, they almost turn you into a coon. Because when you look at sports, there's a book called The $40 Million Slaves. Great book about how black athletes have always been treated like they were on plantations. And black athletes, because they've had so much stock in panache in black society, The people in the dominant society have always tried to stifle them. That goes back to Jack Johnson. Black athletes have always been told to be put in their place because the white supremacists say, we can't beat you in the ring, we can't beat you on the field, but we can beat you outside of the ring and the field in the system of white supremacy. Go back to Jack Johnson. Nobody could beat that man in the ring. So every time he would win a fight, they would start lynching black people. So there's always been this thing about controlling black athletes. So when black athletes start to speak about things outside of the game, they're severely punished. This is why we see athletes, whenever they talk about race, they're always talking about, well, what about black on black crime? Because really they have no choice. If they talk about systematic racism, they're going to get the same treatment as my brother Kaepernick. Kaepernick is being thrown under the bus right now. See, in the 1960s, a lot of black athletes, they created a union where they would all talk about these racial issues together. Right. So one person ain't out there by himself stuck.
Like Jim Brown.
Jim Brown, loved. He was in my movie Hidden Colors 4. Love that brother. Ali. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, all of them had a meeting and said, we're going to talk about this together. We don't have that now. So we had our brother Kaepernick coming out on his own. He's the sacrificial lamb, and this brother's getting death threats. Yeah, they're talking about killing this brother.
But on the flip side, his jersey is outselling all the other jerseys. I actually bought one of his jerseys to support.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, I mean, because it's interesting, you know, we had Miko Grimes recently on VladTV. You know who she is?
I don't know her.
She is the wife of Brett Grimes, who's an NFL player, but she's extremely outspoken.
Oh,
you know, about the NFL. Actually, I mean, at one point she was so outspoken that she got her husband kicked off the Dolphins.
Damn.
Because some of the things she said. I think the owner even confirmed this. But you know, one of the things that we covered was that Miko Grimes said that you're a slave when you're a college athlete.
You can be in college for 4 years and not be anywhere near your degree. And a lot of that happens. So you're not getting a free education. You're not getting anything for free. You're actually a freaking slave, if you know, for lack of words, but that's what you are.
Absolutely. The college football teams, man, they make billions of dollars. They make billions, and those kids don't get nothing. And I like what those kids did over there in Missouri. They staged a protest over there to get the president of the college kicked out. And the people in the dominant society did not like that. They don't like us thinking for ourselves because they were letting a lot of racial incidents go on that campus and they wouldn't do anything about it. So the players said, we're not going to play a game because we ain't getting paid anyway. So we ain't going to play if you keep this president here. So they had to get him out. More black folks need to use their leverage like that.
Well, when you had this, was it the Coon Awards?
The Coon Train Awards.
The Coon Train Awards. Like, who were some of the winners?
I think Stephen A. Smith won.
Why Stephen A. Smith?
Well, people voted. We had people actually voted. They voted on it, and he said a lot of stuff. You know, he's one of these "what about black on black crime" type of dudes. See, whenever you have black people, when we talk about systematic white supremacy and their response is what about black on black crime, they're not really concerned about black crime at all. Basically, they're regurgitating white supremacist talking points because that's what people in the dominant society want black people to say. So that makes you a coon. If you do something that's detrimental knowingly to other black folks, and you know it's detrimental to them as a whole, as a collective, for your own personal gain, that's what a coon is.
Well, I interviewed Willie D not too long ago. He had a song called Coon. You heard it?
Oh yeah, that's my dude. Willie's my dude. Willie texted me a couple of weeks ago. He said, what did he text me? He was, we were talking about some coon. I forgot what coon we were talking about. Oh, he saw the Coon Train Award for the first time.
Okay.
He saw the Coon Train. He was like, and there was a female judge there named Hope Flood, and she was kind of coonish herself. So she was kind of going along with the coons. And he texted me like, how come they didn't whoop her ass? Like,
well, in this song, Coon, which we talked about.
Yeah.
The one line that stood out and raised a lot of eyebrows in that song was, I wish I would have been Stacey Dash on the ground instead of Michael Brown, but with additional rounds.
Yeah, because Michael Brown ain't never sold the community out. Michael Brown had so much more potential. We could have used Michael Brown. We can't use Stacey Dash. She's useless.
Now, you actually disagree that Stacey Dash is a coon.
Oh no, I don't disagree. She's a coon.
Really?
Definitely.
Because on Breakfast Club, you actually said she wasn't.
No, I probably said she was a bed wench.
What's that?
Negro bed wench. That's like a female version of a coon. That's a whole slave term. During slavery, you had the slave masters. They would have certain black women who were, their concubine, and a lot of these black women would either run away or they would have to conform. And in the slave narratives, they would refer to them as their bed wench or Negro bed wench. And for example, the movie Django. The Calvin Candy character, he had a black woman there named Sheba. And if you look at that movie, it's a black woman that she don't even have any lines in the movie. She's just sitting around drinking champagne in the movie. A lot of folks miss that. But she's dressed nice, hair nice, has on pearls, and she's looking at Django with disgust.
Right.
And the thing,
just like Samuel Jackson. Looked
yeah, just like Sam. Yeah, you have the
Sam
coon.
absolutely killed that role.
Oh, he
I
perfect.
think he should have gotten an Oscar
Me
for
too.
that.
He was perfect in that. But you had Samuel Jackson, who was the coon, and you had Sheba, who was the quiet bed wench. And I think Quentin put that in there deliberately, which is good to show, because a lot of folks don't even understand the mindset of a Negro bed wench who worked with the white supremacists to undermine black society. And during the slave rebellions, it was the coons and the bed wenches who would tell on the other slaves and thwart what was happening because they were taken care of. Like, why would we rebel? I don't want to rebel. I'm drinking champagne. I'm living nice. My kids are living nice. I'm not out there in that field. So I'm going to tell on everybody who tries to mess this up. And we have that today.
Yeah. What do you think about Cam Newton?
Cam, they scared him into submission. They scared him into submission. They did, because, a few months ago, they were calling him all types of thugs, gang members. They were talking about he's associated with gangs because he was doing the dab. They were calling him all types of stuff.
The dab is not a gang
Dude,
sign of any sort.
At all. But they flipped him. They flipped on him. And from what I understand, they got some kind of conservative advisor for him to teach him how to be media savvy, which basically they wanted him to use the whole what about black on black crime nonsense.
Did he actually use that?
I don't know if he used those terms, but he was one of these, I think, all lives matter, and, playing right down the middle, very neutral. You don't speak about political issues. You don't speak about black issues. You gotta play it right down the middle. And if you don't play it through the middle, you gotta criticize black folks somehow. It's like RZA. RZA did that from Wu-Tang.
How so?
RZA did an interview and he was talking about all lives matter. And then he started talking about, well, why don't young black people pull up their pants? Why don't young black men just kind of dress better? And this is a guy who started Wu-Wear. This is the guy who started the Wu-Tang Clan, and they got to him. See, when they dangle that money, and that's how systematic white supremacy works. It works through economic castration because they get you tied to them economically, and we don't have a parallel economy, so black folks are kind of forced to conform or jeopardize their economic stability.
Yeah, I mean, money plays a major role in how people act.
Absolutely.
There's really no way around that.
Exactly. So that's why so many people have to go along with the program, even though they know the program is wrong.
Who else were the nominees in your Coon Awards?
Oh, man. We had different categories. We had a sports category. We had a newscaster category. We had, for newscaster was Don Lemon.
Yeah, Don Lemon again.
I think Larry Elder was one of the newscasters. I know Jesse Lee Peterson was one of them. I know Sheriff Clark, he won a Coon Award.
Sheriff
Clark, yeah. He's pathetic with his.
Who spoke at the Republican convention.
Yeah, but he's a Democrat, by the way. A lot of folks don't know.
Democrat?
He's a Democrat. A lot of people think he's a Republican. He is a Democrat. He's always run as a Democrat. But this guy, that's the real life Stephen from Django. Yeah. But the system of white supremacy does that. They create black people who have to conform to that system, because what's the opposite of that? Punishment. See, people, when I do the Hidden Colors series, people will, and a lot of white supremacists say, well, Tariq, you're hustling money talking about race. The money is not empowering black folks, empowering a group of people who don't have the resources like that. The money is in the Coon train, talking about what about black on black crime. That's where the big money is. This is why the same people you see on Fox News and CNN all the time. And I'm on CNN every blue moon, but the people you see all the time are the ones talking about what about black on black crime? We're our own worst enemy. All cops aren't bad. Those are the people you see get the book deals and all that from the dominant society.
Well, the one thing that people like to exclude in the black on black crime argument is that when you have black on black crime, the person perpetrating the crime goes to prison.
Absolutely.
When you have police on black crime, most times the policeman or woman walks away.
Exactly.
I mean, remember there was that shooting that just happened recently where the white female officer claimed that she went deaf during that particular incident, which to me was the stupidest argument I've ever heard.
Exactly.
We'll see what happens when it actually goes to trial.
Exactly. And they're going to throw that out. They're going to throw that case out.
You think so?
Yeah, I know so, because the charge, it's a weak charge. When they want to get you, they know how to charge you correctly. You know, black folks, we get charged. If we shoot a gun, we'll get about 8 felonies based on shooting that gun one time. Firing by a school, firing an unlawful weapon, firing as a felon, firing while on probation, firing by a church. You know, I mean, they have all types of hidden charges that they can throw on that. They only gave that woman one charge, which was, I think, manslaughter in the first degree, something like that.
So once you beat that one charge, you're off.
That one charge, they'll toss that thing out so fast. They already set it up to let her go. And that's what we got to understand. When people talk about police reform, we don't need police reform. You can't reform white supremacy. We need a protection barrier. We need something to protect black people and black society in particular. When they talk about police reform, basically that's them giving more money to police. I know Hillary Clinton, I think she talked about giving $1 billion to the police for police reform. That's not going to help nothing. That's going to encourage more behavior. We're going to give you more money for shooting these people.
Well, I recently had Mark Lamont Hill
on
my show, and we got into a big debate over the death penalty.
My opposition to the death penalty is rooted in a few things. One, we get it wrong way too often. It's a technological argument, right? We swear people did it until we find out they didn't, right? And we've had too many cases where we were convinced somebody did it until they didn't do it.
Now that makes sense. That makes sense, and I can co-sign that. And unfortunately, in our society, anything is a death penalty for black people, because jaywalking can be a death sentence. Being mentally ill can be a death sentence.
Right.
Stealing cigarettes can be a death sentence. So
right.
If it's all across the board, if it's an equal thing, all races are getting the death penalty for the same crime, yes. But if you have one particular race getting killed, because this is not just the death penalty, black people are getting by these race soldiers. I don't call them cops. If you're killing a person, shooting them in the back 5 times and just violating the Constitution, you're not a cop. There's nothing in a police manual that says shoot a person in the back 5 times. There's nothing in a police manual that says who's unarmed. Nothing in a police manual. Nothing in a police manual that says hide the evidence and hide the video and turn the video off. That's Nazism. These are race soldiers posing as cops.
Right. I mean, in fact, I had heard that certain cops now are, when they're pulling people over, they raise the hood of their car so the dash cam doesn't work.
Exactly. And you know, a lot of this stuff that's going on now, there's a book in the 70s called The Turner Diaries that talked about the stuff that's going on now. It's a very racist book. It was written by some white supremacists. And they talked about how they wanted to, overthrow the government and really started to expunge black people from society. They talked about blowing up federal buildings, and they did with Timothy McVeigh. When he blew up that building in 1995, he had a copy of that book in his car.
Really?
Yeah. And that book talked about how white supremacist groups are going to infiltrate law enforcement in order to be able to kill black people with impunity. The FBI in 2006 released a statement saying that white supremacist groups have infiltrated law enforcement.
But was Timothy McVeigh a white supremacist?
Yeah.
He was? I never got that impression.
Oh, yeah.
I thought he was anti-government.
You got to understand why they're anti-government. See, that's the thing. They code the language. A lot of these people are anti-federal government.
Right.
And the federal government, they've been anti-federal government going back to the 1800s because the federal government has always stopped the white supremacists from harming black people. During the Reconstruction period, the federal government was in the South, keeping the former slave owners from harming black society. there was something called, I think it was called the Great Compromise, where there was a politician who told the people in the South, if you elect me, I'll take those federal troops out the South. So once they took the federal troops out the South, they started lynching black people wholesale in the South. Let's go back to the 1960s. In the 1960s, when you had all of these segregation marches and you saw black people getting rocks and stuff thrown at them, the federal government had to come in and stop them from harming black people. They had to come in and walk black children to school. It was the federal government. So these white supremacists were walking around with signs talking about, we want states' rights, we want states' rights, states' rights, states' rights. We want the right to do what we want to do to the Negroes, and we don't want the federal government getting in our way. The federal government, they've been the only thing that have given black people any kind of semblance of help. So these white supremacist groups have always been anti-federal government because they step in the way of them harming black people.
Right, but Timothy McVeigh in like his final interviews, I mean, he said that what triggered the bombing was what happened in Waco, Texas, with the federal government coming in and attacking the compound and killing a bunch of people. I mean, it wasn't, he didn't mention the racial thing, I don't think.
No, they talk in codes. They talk in codes. When you look at his background.
But you're about to die. Like, he was about to There's really, you know,
but
not much coding to be doing at that point.
But why would they be so upset with just one incident like that? It wasn't just that one incident. Again, he had that book in his car for a reason. Go back to Cliven Bundy and those dudes. You remember those guys out there in Nevada?
Who's that?
Cliven Bundy was that rancher in Nevada, and they had a standoff with the government.
Oh, right.
Yeah, in 2014. It was two standoffs. One in 2014, one was earlier this year, I think. One in Oregon this year. But the one with Cliven Bundy in Nevada, they had this standoff with the federal government. They were coming in trying to take his land or whatever. Now, they hide their racism under the guise of they're trying to take our land and we got to fight them to take our land. But they backed the government down. The federal government said, okay, these people got guns. We don't want a bloodbath out here, so we'll let them be. So they thought that they had this big victory. Cliven Bundy, directly after that whole standoff, he got on the news talking about black people crazy. He got on the news talking about, yeah, let me tell you about the Negro. I think blacks would be better off in slavery. And people are like, where the hell did that come from? And Fox News started to distance themselves from this guy. Because when you peel the layers back, all of it goes back to their white supremacist views. Now that we got the federal government out the way, now let's deal with the Negroes. That's all that's about. And again, this book, The Turner Diaries, they talked about infiltrating law enforcement so they can have impunity when they harm black people, and they're doing it right now.
Well, you talked about how blacks whore out their votes.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah, black people, in this election, black people shouldn't vote at all. Black people are going to have to learn how to leverage their vote. Black people, we vote out of fear and tradition. The only reason we vote now is because our grandmother fought for the right to vote. Our granddad fought, so I'm going to vote because they fought for the right. But you got the right, but you're not getting anything out of it. And now we're being told we got to vote, or a white supremacist, Donald Trump, is going to get in office. So now we got to vote out of fear. But Hillary Clinton is really no different than Donald Trump. It's just a slower death with Hillary Clinton, because Hillary Clinton and the Clintons, those laws that they've had with the criminal laws in the 90s, that has put a lot of black people in jail. So she's really no different from Trump. So black people, we got to leverage our vote. The most strategic thing we can do in this election is not vote at all, because they still have that benign neglect policy for black people. In the 1970s, they came up with this policy to stop black people from rioting called benign neglect, meaning let's stop promising black people stuff. Let's act like they don't even exist. So whenever we're running or campaigning, we'll use these vague terms like minority or people of color, but never specifically say anything about black people. The Democrats, they just had a leak, that WikiLeaks stuff that they had recently, where there was documents saying that if there's some Black Lives Matter people asking about specifics for black people, do not specifically say you're going to do anything for black people. They had a memo saying this. So that's the benign neglect policy that's been going on for the last 45 years. So if they're not going to offer us anything or do anything for us, and we're out here getting slaughtered, damn voting. Go ahead.
Well, you had mentioned that when black people support politicians, presidential candidates and so forth, all they get out of it is a photo op.
Yeah.
And they don't actually ask for demand actual policy changes.
Yeah, because a lot of black folks, man, we've been taught to think like slaves. And all we need is Hillary Clinton to come down and give us some attention every 4 years. Bernie Sanders, he can come down and give us some attention. Any white politician, all they have to do is show up, do a photo op, do the latest Coon dance, do the latest jigaboo dance, and we'll be like, oh, he's okay, she's okay. And we got to stop being politically immature like that, because we want to be included. We want to be in the process, but we don't have to be included to the detriment of our dignity. We're not getting nothing out of the deal. Like with Barack Obama, we made a mistake with Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Because Barack Obama, we've had the biggest black turnout for Barack Obama. In the last election, more black people voted than in the history of America for Barack Obama. They came out and voted in droves. We right now are getting slaughtered, and right now we are not getting anything out the deal. Black people are in a very bad space right now. More black people are being killed now in the last few years than black people in the entire 1960s.
Do you think that more black people are getting killed right now, or there's just more cameras around actually capturing that?
No, a
because
lot of people.
I personally think that police on black violence has been pretty consistent for decades. It's just now everyone has a video camera in their pocket. The whole thing with Rodney King, what made that so special was there happened to be a guy with a video camera in was it the late 80s?
Yeah, the early 90s. It was in 90.
Early
91,
90s?
I think.
Yeah, you're right. 91.
91.
I remember, I remember where I was when that happened. It was 91.
Mm-hmm.
Having a video camera in 91 was sort of weird. Like, not a lot of people had them. But now, damn near every person in America has a video camera in their pocket.
Right.
So,
but the thing is, they
they're
were
capturing this all the time.
And look, I lived in South Central at the time of Rodney King, and look, I've been jumped on by cops and all that. They were beating a lot of black people, but they weren't really executing black people like that back then, because there was still a level of punishment back then. There was still a level of punishment back then. Now there's no punishment whatsoever. Yeah, they weren't killing black people like that, just blatantly executing them like that. They'd beat the shit out of you, but just as far as executing you, nah. They didn't. Right now, police officers are told to execute black folks because now you don't have any witnesses. And probably because of all the lawsuits that happened in the 80s and 90s. Because if black people lived to tell about their beatings, the cities would get sued. LA, especially with the gang beatings in the 80s and 90s, LA would get sued a lot. So they said, okay, well, let's stop these lawsuits, shoot to kill. And that's what they're doing now. They're not shooting to wound, they're shooting to kill right now. So,
I mean, but that results in lawsuits also.
But from the city.
Sandra Bland's family got like millions.
Yeah. And that comes from the city, but the cops are not being punished. So there's no internal investigation, none of that stuff. Because the police unions are stronger than they were back then. That's another thing. The fuel behind all this stuff are the unions. The unions have gotten more political clout. The unions have these prosecutors and these judges in their pockets now. They didn't have that in the 80s and 90s. They got it now. The unions control presidents now because they vote in a big block. They vote, the police unions, the Fraternal Order of Police, it's like 300,000 members, and they vote as a block, and they put money on the politicians. So they're very powerful, and that's one thing. These unions have to be broken up because they're acting as Gestapo units right now.
Well, recently, Pusha T teamed up with Hillary Clinton. And you heard about this?
I haven't heard about this.
Well, basically, Hillary Clinton was getting people to register to vote. And for the people who actually registered through this particular campaign, you had a chance to have a meet and greet with Pusha T.
Oh, wow.
Which
She's
I
trying to be
was
like Bernie Sanders. That's like Bernie Sanders getting with Killer Mike, because that gave Bernie Sanders a lot of momentum getting with Killer Mike. And Killer Mike is my dude. He was in Hidden Colors.
I interviewed Killer Mike, actually.
Yeah.
He's a huge Bernie supporter.
Yeah.
But I don't know, a rapper meet and greet, especially on top of that, a rapper named Pusha T, who primarily talks about selling drugs to this day. You know what I'm saying? Like, his last album was all about selling drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I just found it so flimsy.
Yeah.
And so,
that's the,
I don't know, just non-sincere.
it's pandering.
Yeah.
That's the epitome of pandering.
And I actually know someone who's affiliated with with the Hillary Clinton campaign, and I'm like, this is stupid. Like, why are you guys doing this?
And unfortunately, because they say black people love symbolisms. We can give black people symbolisms and they'll fall for it every time. We don't have to give them anything substantive. We just give them symbols, no policy, nothing that's gonna change their situation, no resources. Let's take a couple of pictures with rappers. Let's do the latest dance. Let's do the nay-nay. Let's go to the church, sing a couple of hymns. Let's go to Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles.
Right.
You go to Roscoe's, there's all types of pictures of presidents and candidates.
Right.
And we're satisfied with that. So it's up to black society to say, no, we're not going to be satisfied with that.
Well, you said something interesting in your Breakfast Club interview. And you said that what blacks really need to do is start putting up their money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I interviewed Praz of the Fugees. And I brought up something that he's never talked about before, because it really didn't make very much news, was that you donated $1.2 million to Barack Obama's campaign?
Yo, where you getting these information from?
Is that not true?
I'm starting to think you CIA, man.
Hey man, this is
I
what
mean,
I do.
it's
You know
true.
what
It's
I'm
out
saying?
there
Like,
now. It's out in the universe. Yeah, I did. To a super PAC.
You know, and I asked him, you know, because he came up, you know, came over to my house afterwards. We talked about it, and I'm like, "What did this really get you?" He goes, "Well, it got me a certain level of accessibility, you know, to the political process."
Okay.
So, for example, he's now working with the Hillary Clinton campaign.
Okay.
You know, he was actually working. You know, he helped set up the Breakfast Club interview.
Okay.
And so forth. And you know, we talked about how back in the day when you had like the Muhammad Ali's and so forth, there was very few black millionaires, but the ones that were rich, they actually really focused intensively on trying to fix the political process. You know, they donated a lot of money and so forth. Now you have a lot more, and percentage-wise, much less of them actually give money.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And why do you think that is?
And you know, back in the 60s, you had people like Jim Brown. They had the Black Economic Union.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of businesses that people like Jim Brown helped fund, like
Yeah.
clubs and just all types of institutions that a lot of us don't know about today that Jim Brown was hipping me to.
Yeah, Harry Belafonte.
Yeah.
You had a lot of people that really gave a lot.
Oh.
And now you have, like I said, you have a lot more black millionaires right now, but they don't publicly financially support these institutions. And ultimately, that was the thing about Praz that I learned, was that you got to put up some money.
Absolutely. You do. And but to be fair, a lot of athletes, not all of them, because some of them just don't want to, but a lot of people in black society who are given money from white society, because that's when we talk about athletes, a lot of them make their money with white society. A lot of them are basically told in so many words, if you help out a black cause over here, we're going to look at you a little funny. If you help out a black neighborhood trying to build economic stability, we're going to somehow sabotage that. Now, we'll let you build something over in Africa, like Oprah's South African School or something over there for those people. But if you do something over here that looks like you're elevating all these black folks up, we might have to sabotage that. And a lot of black people are afraid. When Suge and Jay Prince and Irv Gotti, when they were going to start a distribution outlet out here, these guys got raided like days apart from each other. They all went to jail days apart from each other. Suge got raided, Death Row got raided, Gotti got raided. They raided Jay Prince down in Houston.
Jay Prince went to jail?
He didn't go to jail, but I
Yeah.
think it was like a federal investigation down there with him.
Right, I know he's got investigations.
Yeah, and we're told that in black society, don't bring in your folks. You're cool, you're one of the good ones, but don't bring in the others. See, and that's only done to black society. See, this is why, like with Asians don't vote.
They don't.
They have the lowest voter turnout, but they have more per capita wealth and resources than almost any group. Because it's all about money with them. It's all about an economic base, and they can just get their money like, damn, a vote. I'm just gonna give this politician some money and have him do what I want him to do. In New York, when they had that dude, Peter Liang, who killed this brother named Akai Gurley, a black man who got shot by a Chinese-American cop, and they were about to send this cop to jail. The prosecutor was a guy named Ken Thompson, a black guy. All the black people voted for Ken Thompson. Ken Thompson got all the black votes, but none of the black money. The Asians went in and gave him some of that Asian money after Peter Liang got convicted for killing this black man. Ken Thompson came out and said, okay, we don't want no jail time for this guy, because all the Asian people protested and they gave this guy money. They had him in their pocket. So Peter Liang got to walk.
Well, politics is about money.
It's all about
money.
money.
Just because I think Obama spent like $1 billion on his last campaign.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
$1 billion.
$1 billion. And you know, he got a lot of money from gay groups, you know. Hollywood gave him a lot of money. I know George Clooney and all these people had a big fundraiser for him out here. The Latino community, Eva Longoria, she had a big fundraiser for him. This is why, who did Obama speak up for? Hispanic issues, immigration, he's always talking about that. Always talking about gay issues.
Yeah.
Gay marriage, all that stuff, because the gay community, they raised a lot of money for him. We didn't raise the money for Obama.
Yeah, David Geffen.
David Geffen, yeah. Big money to Obama.
Big money.
Big money. And he'll speak about gay issues all day. Obama will come out there with a thong if they asked him to. But when it comes to black issues, we out here getting slaughtered and killed. He'll come out there and just sing some Negro spirituals, but nothing.
Well, you have a problem with Obama's legacy.
I do, because there's no real legacy.
Well, I mean, I could tell you something.
Yes.
Now, I'm not black myself, but
Right.
but I am deeply ingrained in the black community.
Yeah.
Because of my platform and my personal life.
Yeah.
The one thing that you cannot deny is that for all the black children right now who grew up in America with the history of racism and the history of slavery, they can now look at the president of the United States, who is the president of the most powerful country on the planet, and say, I could do that too. It's an example for people to think that they could do that. Because I'll be honest, I did not think that there was going to be a black president in my lifetime. You know, Chris Rock even joked about it. Remember he had that one famous stand-up saying,
Yeah.
you know, Colin Powell's not going to run. You know, Colin Powell, could win.
Yeah.
You know, there's never going to be a black vice president, because some black guy is going to shoot the president,
right.
become a hero in prison,
Right.
and Colin Powell is going to become president. Like, I didn't think it was going to happen. And it actually happened, and it happened twice. And when it comes to business, when it comes to careers, when it comes to the future of humans, they have to look at a role model most of the time to give them direction.
But the thing is, black children are smarter than what we give them credit for. And black children, they understand symbolism. There was a little girl the other day who the media was talking about. She was out there in North Carolina crying because she was scared. You got a lot of black children. You got Obama sitting here in the White House, and black children are looking at this man who cannot help them. These children are scared because every day they see people look like them getting murdered. They see children getting shot by race soldiers. Our sister out there in Baltimore, Corinne Gaines, her son is 5 years old. Her son got shot by a cop. Tamir Rice is 12 years old. He got killed by a race soldier.
Yes.
Another kid out there in Ohio, he got shot in the back. He had a BB gun. So these children see other children who look like them getting it, and this black man in office who can't do anything about it. So they're looking at him as a powerless token, which he is. And that's how systematic racism works.
He's not promoting that. He's not.
But kids know it. Kids know it. You don't have to promote it. See, kids look at action. Kids are very good at looking at action.
But when you look at some of the things that Obama has done, Obamacare.
That's not for black society. See, when people talk about all the things Obama has done, I call that the cake theory. He bakes a cake for everybody and black people get to eat the crumbs. That's all that is. With Obamacare, we get the crumbs of Obamacare.
You think
That's for
Obamacare
everybody.
was the crumbs for black, because it got rid of pre-existing conditions for health insurance. That was always the problem. That's what I thought that was huge, because you could get health insurance, but if they proved that you were sick before you got it, they did not have to treat that.
But that's for everybody. And we get the crumbs for that because we got to go through all the paperwork and the red tape. There's a lot of red tape assigned
With
to
Obamacare,
that.
not so much.
Yeah,
I mean, I actually ended up having to spend more money with Obamacare, but I'm okay with it, because now everyone in the country actually has access to health insurance, which up until the point, there was times I didn't have health insurance. I just couldn't afford it.
That again, that's just crumbs from everybody else's cake. That's like y'all get to eat pig and we get the chitlins. We're okay with the chitlins.
What about, for example, that he's actually commuting the sentences for nonviolent drug offenders?
Again, no, these are not specific for black people, because understand the reason why they're trying to commute some of these sentences, because you got a lot of white people who are starting to go to jail now for all this damn. The biggest illegal drugs in the country is heroin and meth. And some of these white people are getting caught up. Not a lot, but some of them are. So they're starting to commute some of those sentences. So that's not this whole big thing for black people. That's why.
Well, because it was really during the Clinton administration where they, in the Rockefeller laws and stuff like that was, where it was like you would get 30 times the sentence for crack that you would for an equivalent amount of.
Right.
Even though it's essentially the same drug. I mean, it is the same drug. It's just cooked up differently.
Of course.
And
did they say they're doing this specifically for black people though?
No.
That's the thing.
They didn't. But
it's that
a lot of black people were the ones who were locked up for this type of thing. Because I remember, being, living in Oakland for a while, we broke the story that Little D, which was like a drug kingpin in Oakland, that actually had his sentence. He got clemency.
Yeah, I mean, again, we get some crumbs, but I'm talking about something specific for black society. With the Jewish community, he did something specific for Jewish people. There was some money for the Holocaust that he allocated to certain Jewish people. There was money for Native Americans that he allocated money to. He did something specifically for the Hispanic community with the immigration. He did something specifically for the gay community with some of those laws.
Well, the gay marriage
it wasn't
so
like
forth.
Everybody gets a piece of the cake. You know what I'm saying? These specific groups got targeted, allocated resources or policies to them. We don't get that. With us, it always has to be some all-inclusive thing, and you guys we'll help you out too. You get some Obamacare along with everybody else. That's crumbs in the cake thing. We are being targeted specifically by executions out here. We're being targeted specifically by economic deprivation, employment deprivation, gentrification. Black schools are being targeted specifically, we're being shut down. So we are getting targeted specifically, but we get this all-inclusive thing. That's part of the benign neglect policy.
Do you believe the black people deserve
reparations?
Reparations, yeah.
Of course. Of course.
I do too.
Yeah, of course. Now, is it going to happen? Well, not no time soon.
Here's what's interesting. There actually has been glimmers of that's happened. Because we actually put up a story where Georgetown actually acknowledged their role in the slave trade.
Right.
And offered priority admission to
right.
descendants
That's a trick. That's a trick. When they
slaves.
started doing that, a brother named Claude Anderson talked about that in one of his books, Black Labor, White Wealth. I think that was the name of it. But he talked about whenever they start offering black folks something, don't let them use that. We're going to give you some free education stuff. No, that's a trick bag, because what they're doing, most blacks, there's no such thing as a black school in this country. Most black colleges, HBCUs, are funded and started by white people. So when you allocate resources to send a black person to an HBCU, you're basically giving money back to the white people who own the college.
Well, technically yes, but you can't downplay the role of an education.
Yeah, but the thing is, you have an education, but you have no way to utilize your education once you get it. There are no jobs waiting for you. Allocate jobs. We need jobs out here for black society.
Well,
they should zone off some of these places. Understand, the reason why we have ghettos out here, Vlad, is because during the Jim Crow era, there was a lot of black folks who were taking responsibility for their situation. They were trying to get certain towns incorporated and zoned off so that they could police themselves, so that they can have an economic stability progress thing going on. And the white supremacists, they would sabotage all of these neighborhoods. You had places like Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was a prosperous black area. They just burned that down and blew it up. But you had other places like Lincoln Heights out of Ohio, is right by Cincinnati, was a black area that was very prosperous. And they were about to incorporate it as an all black city, meaning they would have their own black police force. They already had factories there that would fuel the economy, and the white people from surrounding areas, they just rezoned the area, turned that place into a ghetto, and took all the resources out of it. And we need compensation for that, because when we live in these ghettos and people say, hey, why don't you blacks do better? We have to look at the people who created those conditions. Even when Chicago, we talk about Chicago, people talk about, well, Chicago, all this black on black crime, all you Negroes won't do anything about the crime. There's groups out there like the Interrupters, other groups who have been trying to curve off and thwart the violence out there. Their funding gets thwarted by the governor out there, and most of the funding go to police. They get all types of resources and funding to them, but they never curve off crime. And a lot of the black businesses in Chicago are sabotaged and undermined. I know brothers out there who own businesses and they get all types of liquor license notices and noise ordinance citations. So they deliberately try to sabotage black businesses out there to keep people in a deprived state, which is going to create a violent state.
Well, I mean, recently we wrote a story about how Oakland is giving quote unquote reparations to residents with marijuana convictions, where if you had a marijuana conviction in Oakland, you were kind of placed at the top of the list for getting a medical marijuana license to actually operate your own facility, your own legal facility. You know, so that's what I'm saying. Between the Georgetown thing and the Oakland thing, you're starting to see some glimmer of reparations.
Well, it's mostly symbolic though, see? I don't like symbolisms. If you're gonna give something, give something. Look, the people in the dominant society, they know what they've done and they know what they can do. They know how to fix these situations. You have social scientists who look at how to control cities 20 and 30 years down the line. They know how to fix stuff. But what they do, they put out these stories about how they're going to give black people preferential treatment in admission in a school. Now that sounds good, but that's basically a bag of garbage. That's nothing. We need resources allocated. You got people out here who are struggling. We got people out here starving. You got people out here who want to work, and they need to allocate the resources to make that happen. During the Great Depression, the white crime rate went up. When you look at the 1930s, it was white criminals all over the place. Bonnie and Clyde, Machine Gun Kelly, Pretty Boy Floyd, all these people were popping up in the 1930s because there was no economic stability. They started to create all of these big structures like the Golden Gate Bridge. That was built at that time so that could give white people an opportunity to work. The Empire State Building, they had all of these big monumental projects to help white people create an economic stability state. So they need to do the same thing now.
Well, at one point when I used to live in New York, I lived in Borough Park, which was a Hasidic Jewish neighborhood.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like this before. I mean, whereas like Friday night, everything was shut down, you know, for the Sabbath, literally no electricity, no cars, nothing up until like Saturday evening when everything was open up again. I mean, this was a community where they had their own ambulances, they had their own schools. Other people were not allowed. Like you cannot go to one of these schools, these ambulance, you know, there was a big deal that happened, I think in Crown Heights, which had a similar Hasidic Jewish neighborhood where a Hasidic Jewish man hit a black kid, and then the Jewish ambulance came and picked up the Hasidic man and left the black kid to die. And there was a bunch of riots that happened afterwards. But do you think that there could be these types of closed black societies in America today?
We got to get political about that. There can be, but we're always sabotaged by the white supremacists, unfortunately. Whenever we try to do that, they always come up with ways to undermine that. We had that in Wilmington. That was undermined. South Central LA, for example. You had Central Avenue, which was a very prosperous area during the Jim Crow era. You had people like Marilyn Monroe, all those people who would go down there to Central Avenue. And what they would do to sabotage these areas, they started building freeways right in the middle of these black areas. Freeways and stadiums. Go to Miami. Miami, before Liberty City was a ghetto, that area, they had something called the Harlem of the South. It was a very prosperous area down there. They built all those freeways, sabotaged that. You look at any black area around the country that used to be prosperous, they put a freeway there and sabotaged it. And this is why we got to get political. We got to start getting politicians in our pockets so they don't sabotage black progress. Just like the mafia. The mafia, they knew how to control organized crime and they knew how to control the politicians so that the politicians wouldn't mess up their organization. They knew the importance of that. They had J. Edgar Hoover in their pocket. J. Edgar Hoover never even acknowledged the existence of the mafia.
He said the mafia doesn't exist.
Yeah, he said they don't exist.
And the biggest threat was
black people. It was the Panthers and all that.
Panthers, the COINTELPRO thing.
We got to learn how to get these people in our pockets, man. Money talks.
Money talks.
Yeah.
What was your issue with Roland Martin?
Roland. I was on CNN and HLN, one of them shows, and one of Roland's colleagues, frat sisters, whatever, she was on there, and we were talking about this one sister who got arrested for having a lewd sexual thing with her boyfriend. I forgot what her name was, the chick who was in Django. And whenever I'm on these shows, I always bring things in the context of white supremacy. So I started talking about the context of white supremacy, and there was one sister on there, I forgot, Toted something, that's Roland's person. And every time I would mention white supremacy, she started kind of bucking her eyes, and she would get upset, and she kept talking about the woman was playing the race card. So I had an issue with her downgrading or downing another black person in front of white people. I got a real problem with black folks who do that, because white people never do that. That's part of white supremacist code. You never down other white people or side with black people for a white person. That's very rare that they do that. But black folks, we got a very bad habit of doing that. So I was disagreeing with her. So after the show, I posted up some stuff on my Instagram, and Roland got mad because people in my Instagram were clowning this lady. So Roland, he has this thing where he kind of dresses down black people. He says something crazy about Snoop. It's almost like a reprimand thing. He was reprimanding Lil Bow Wow and all that stuff. So that's kind of Roland's thing. So he kind of came for me with that a little bit. Like, hey, you shouldn't say nothing negative about her. She's good people, and you this, whoop, whoop, whoop. I said, Roland, do you want to clarify? And we're talking on social media. I'm like, clarify what you're saying, brother. I mean, what are you saying? So he wouldn't say anything directly to me at that point. He was subtweeting and saying little things to other people, and people kept asking him to clarify what he was saying about me. And then something happened where he said I was a punk. I said, okay. I was gonna let you slide, but now it's time to be petty. So then I did a little roast video, and shout out to Martin. It's all fun and games. So I had to clown him for dancing for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton did a campaign thing with him, and he was up there dancing with us. So I had to get on him about that. So, but Roland, to give to his credit, Roland, he does speak up for black society. I will give him that. Roland does a lot to represent black society, but that whole dancing with Hillary Clinton, that will erase your whole legacy. It only takes one thing to mess up everything else.
Everything you worked for.
Yeah.
We had Dr. Umar Johnson
Yeah.
on our show recently, and he said something interesting. He said that
ironically, you can only discriminate on the basis of gender or sexuality in public school. So you can have an all-boys school, you can have an all-girls school, you can have an all-gay school, but you cannot have an all-black school.
I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's needed. I mean, we need something where we have an institution where it's owned and controlled and run by us.
Right.
Unfortunately, when we try to have something all black, people try to come to us with the whole reverse racism thing. Oh, yeah, that's discriminatory,
Because, I mean, at HBCUs, you have a lot of non-black students.
Yeah, they allow that. They allow, because HBCUs are white controlled. They're white run. Most HBCUs, again, like I said earlier, they were started by white people. Like Spelman, that's named after Rockefeller's wife, Laura Spelman.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they were named after white people.
Okay.
So a lot of folks don't know that. But that's why they don't have a problem with it being a black school, because the white people control it. They don't have a problem with a lot of black people being anywhere. The problem they have is when black people control it. That's the problem, because when you control it, you can control the curriculum, you can control the output. Just like when I did the Hidden Colors series, people had a problem with that. They don't have a problem with black history because they're slave documentaries all the time. But Hidden Colors, we didn't go through any white contributors, any white donors. We raised the money ourselves, put the movie out, and talked about history from our own perspective. And then people are like, whoa, wait a minute, this is reverse racism. Because when we're in control of something, that's when people have a problem. That's why they don't mind tokenism. When it's one black person in a certain position, they don't mind that. They'll let a black person be the head of a white school. They'll let a black person be the head of the Department of Justice, Loretta Lynch, Eric Holder. They'll let a black person be the head of the United States, quote unquote, because he's only one person, and that person can be taken out any minute. And as long as that one person doesn't trickle down any power to all the other people. So when you have an institution where there's a black person on the top and there's a lot of black people under that black person, there's always a problem in white supremacist society.
Talk about backhanded compliments. You talked about how people would complain that there's not enough black models on these magazines, on these fashion magazines. They would turn around and put Gabby Sidibe on this. I found that actually kind of funny.
Yeah, that happens with us, man. They give us backhanded compliments all the time. Going back to the early 1900s, we talked about this in the Hidden Colors film, when black people were fighting for justice. They said, okay, we're going to give you black folks justice. We're going to give you a monument, because black people fought to have the Lincoln Monument, because at the time, black people were really big on Lincoln. Lincoln is popular because of black people. White people never liked Lincoln at first. After Lincoln was killed, people were glad Lincoln was killed. White people never gave a shit about Lincoln. It was black people who elevated Lincoln. As a matter of fact, it was black people who elevated Veterans Day as well. A lot of people don't know that. It was us commemorating the veterans that fought in the Civil War. But black people elevated Lincoln, and there was a lot of white people in the South that were upset about that. So they said, okay, we're going to give you blacks a monument of your own. We're going to have a Mammy monument. And there was a movement. They were going to have Mammy statues all over the country.
Really?
Yeah, of these Aunt Jemima Mammies all over the place. And the black press said, no, we can't have that. So it was the black press that sabotaged that movement. And that was going to be another backhanded compliment from them. And even now, black people, we complain about not enough black models being in magazines, not enough black women and black beauty being represented. So the white supremacists, they'll be like, okay, we'll give you want a black model on a fashion magazine? We'll give you one. Gabby Sidibe, come on over here. Let's doll you up. Don't she look cute? That's a backhanded compliment, and it's not a diss to our sister Gabby. She seems like a sweet girl, but they don't do that with white women. You're not going to put an overweight white woman on a fashion magazine unless she's in on the joke, unless it's a female white comedian.
Adele's been on the cover of fashion magazines.
But I mean, she's a extremely talented singer, but
Gabby's a talented actress.
Gabby's been in a couple of movies. She's on
Empire.
See, that's the thing. Gabby's not no exquisite actor. She's not.
No, she's not an Oscar caliber.
She's not an Oscar caliber.
Although she did kill her role.
Let's be real.
In Precious.
But Precious, she played herself. Let's be real. She played herself. Precious, she's just grunting through the whole movie. You understand? I mean, really, that wasn't an Oscar performance. She played herself.
What's her name got an Oscar from that film? Her mother.
Monique. Yeah. Now, Monique is great. I love Monique. Monique killed that.
Yeah.
But Gabby Sidibe just literally, she played herself. They needed somebody who was morbidly obese, who can kind of grunt the lines through the whole movie. And that wasn't really an Oscar-winning performance. And I'm not saying that to degrade that sister, but for them to push her out there like that, that was really a backhanded compliment.
Right, because it's interesting. I just read that just recently, there was a Miss Brazil competition.
Yeah.
And a black woman won. And this was only the second time in its 62-year history in Brazil that a black woman won Miss Brazil, which is interesting because I've been to Brazil lots of times, and my thing has always been like, Brazil has some of the most beautiful black women I've ever seen in my life.
Absolutely.
Just stunning, incredible bodies, incredible faces, everything.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, you mean to tell me that in Brazil, that is a very mixed society, in 62 years, only twice?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, white supremacy is a global thing, man.
Yeah.
White supremacy is global. And in any society, white is always right. And I've been to Brazil, and when I go down to Brazil, I notice all the white people living in the nice areas, and you go down there to them favelas and people start getting a little more melanin in their skin. You know?
That's true. That's true. I interviewed Akala recently.
Yeah.
And what he told me was interesting. He said that
slavery in the Caribbean the majority of the slavery happened in the Caribbean and Latin America, which is one of the interesting things. Because of Hollywood and because of the African American community's massive cultural impact on the world, most people have come to understand racialized slavery through the lens of America. But I mean, more enslaved Africans were taken to the tiny Caribbean island of Martinique than they were brought to the United States. Almost 90% of the slavery happened in the Caribbean and Brazil.
Which actually surprised me, because I just figured America was so big and so forth. But, you know, back in the day, there was only 13 colonies. There was only a small portion. So most of the Africans ended up in the Caribbean.
And Brazil, too.
And
Speaking
Brazil,
of
exactly.
yeah.
And what was interesting in that conversation was that in the Caribbean, you don't have racism like you do in America. Because after the slaves were freed, it became an all-black country. So there was no Ku Klux Klan
Right.
in Jamaica.
Right, right.
And for example, Jamaicans don't call themselves the N-word. And you know what I mean?
Right.
When they use it, it sounds kind of weird.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's not something that's actually used as a term of endearment or anything else like that. So you just had a very different situation in places like the Caribbean versus America. What is your take on that?
Well, the thing is, the white supremacy is global, and they control the world directly and indirectly. And even though there's not a high presence of white supremacists, that doesn't mean that they don't control it. Like Jamaica is completely controlled by the white supremacists. They control it indirectly. Like, we don't have to be here to control it, but they control everything. They control the economy, they control the trade, they control what goes on there. They control Haiti, they control the Dominican Republic, they control all that. They control Cuba, they control all of that, even though it's a high black population. Even, let's go to Africa. People always tell black people, you don't like it over here, go back to Africa. Africa is completely dominated by the white supremacists. They control Africa directly and indirectly. I was just in South Africa. You got white people in lovely homes, living nice out there, and you got the black people living in shanty towns all over South Africa. Apartheid is alive and well over there.
Even after Mandela.
Even after Mandela.
The one thing about Mandela, when he came into power, the one thing that he did was that he was not going to punish the whites.
Exactly.
In South Africa. That was the thing that allowed him to maintain his power.
Exactly. Exactly. And if people can allow you to maintain power, they can allow the consequences of the lives of everybody else that you're supposed to be in power over.
I mean, I don't really follow South Africa politics like that. I mean, is the president of South Africa still black?
I think he is. I think they have another black president. It's token. That's why they got Barack Obama. They said, okay, we can do that in South Africa. We can do that here. Put up a black person as a symbol, but we control all the power behind the scenes. Again, when I was in South Africa, we did the whole tour of Mandela's jail cell and all that. And there was a black guy talking about it. He was one of Mandela's people. And he was talking about how apartheid is over. Let everybody know apartheid is over. And this all white people, basically, a lot of white tourists. But when you go down to the neighborhoods, I didn't see no black neighborhood where black people were prosperous in Cape Town, not one. And a lot of black people who are from Africa are afraid or embarrassed to say this because they don't want to have the image of Africa as just everybody being poor and destitute. But black people are in a negative situation globally, and the apartheid system is still there. The white supremacist system is still here. So we have to look at that from a global perspective.
Well, one of the things that Akala said when I interviewed him was that
there is nowhere in the UK you can go where there's only black folk. You know, like if you go to the south side of Chicago or you go to certain parts of the Bronx, I've visited family up there, and literally everyone that you won't see. Like, in fact, my business partner grew up in Brooklyn when she, before age 10, you know, I don't think she'd even seen any white people. Do you know what I mean? So there was Brooklyn back then, you know, a whole school, there wasn't a single non-black person in the school. You have places in the UK that are close to that, certainly with the schooling, but even then you're probably talking like 70-30 if you went somewhere like Peckham or Moss Side in Manchester back in the day.
You know, for example, you go into Atlanta and you see black middle-class neighborhoods. Not so much Harlem anymore.
Right.
But, you know, for a certain time in the Harlem Renaissance and so forth, you had affluent blacks, you know, in Harlem who had nice homes, nice communities and so forth. You go to the UK, you don't see that. You see the ghettos, and then, you know, you see a few rich black people who live in the white neighborhoods.
Right.
But you don't see a black middle class.
Yeah, and that's being erased here. See, we used to have a black middle class in South Central LA.
Yeah.
There used to be that. And then when they start taking away all those factories and closing down those factories, they can go to Detroit, go to Chicago. When those when those jobs started to go overseas, black people were really hit hard. So now there's this big gap. You have poverty and you have certain black people who are, again, sprinkled in white society. And the lack of black middle class, that's one of the reasons why they can come in and start targeting black people the way they do. Because the people on the bottom, they don't have any political clout. The black folks on the top, they might have the political clout, but they're not going to risk it for those on the bottom. These are the what about black on black crime type of Negroes up here. You understand? So that's the problem. We have to understand we here are in the same position as those people down there.
I feel you.
Yeah.
Tariq Nasheed.
Yes,
Definitely
sir.
a pleasure, man.
Man, my pleasure being here, brother.
Absolutely.